I'm joined by Sean Flynn, the Burgess hurling manager in Tipperary, and Tipperary video analyst both last year for the All-Ireland win and this year as well. Sean, welcome to our game. How are you doing?
Sure, Shane. Delighted to be on.
Yeah, great to have you. We might as well jump straight to it because you've done an awful lot of slides and I'm going to bring them up on screen. And a lot of it's basically to do with the puckouts between Limerick and Waterford heading into the All-Ireland final. And we know it's such a crucial area and the amount of scores you can get off it. Actually, even just to ask you broadly, how important is it, like when you're setting up a team like Tipperary last year and this year, how much time do you even spend on the puckouts?
Teams are spending more time on it, and as you said to me during the week, you're going to probably have 30 plus puckouts in a game yourself, and you're going to defend against hopefully 30 plus puckouts in a game. So, it's a key part of the game, and if you think of it, there's 60 plays in a game where you can have maybe some sort of plan and clarity on. So I think it's a really important part of the game now, and it's in the last couple of years. I think Limerick woke everybody up. I think in 2018 Limerick woke everybody up, and I think teams are really going hard at it now, and teams are still finding their way, even club teams, but it's a huge part of it now, I think.
Yeah, and we'll get to Limerick and Waterford's pockets in a little while, but is it hard to analyse and sort of figure out what teams are trying to do, or with a little bit of footage do you start to see patterns?
It really depends. Some teams are kind of pre-programmed a bit, and you can kind of gauge what they like to do and where they're setting up and where it might go. But then there's some teams who have it really, really well off, and it's really about the coaches then, I suppose, giving the players the ability to make the decisions on the field and kind of read it. But sometimes I suppose we focus on the won and lost stats, and sometimes they can be misleading, because you might lose a puck out, but within a second or two, because you're well set or you have bodies there, you might actually turn over possession straight away and be able to attack again. So it's not, sometimes some teams are hard to analyse, others probably a bit more easier to gauge what they're doing.
And how much does the size profile of your players and their speed and whatever dictate, do you have to kind of go with an a la carte approach based on the type of players you have?
Sometimes you would, but for me, at the end of the day, if you look at a long puck out, if you're pucking a ball down on top of a couple of bodies, everyone should be able to try and at least break the ball. You might not snap a ball, and as you can see from the games, the day is kind of I suppose last weekend was nearly a throwback to the old days where puckouts were being snapped and things like that. But you can see now teams, I think, are focusing on the percentages nearly, and it's about getting that ball to ground really, and then getting on the breaks. But if you look at some teams, they are using what they have, the pace, and I personally think that's why Seamus Flanagan was probably brought into the team last weekend. Kind of horses for courses, and he was a bit of an option there if there was space for Nicky Quaid to go along into space,
So you've done up a number of slides for us here, and I'm just going to bring up the broad strokes one first, the puck-out battle. So this is Watford and Limerick, who'll obviously contest the All-Ireland final. Scored off their own puck-out in the game so far. Watford has scored 532, which is incredible. Almost double what Limerick have scored, which is 218. Conceded off their own puck-out, Watford 16. Limerick 1-7, and then scored off the opposition puck out, 19 points for Watford, and a fairly jaw-dropping 131 from Limerick. That's incredible stuff. That's the winning and losing of games there.
Yeah, it is. And to be honest, for me now, I gauge how much a puck out is functioning and not functioning off these numbers, rather than looking just at won and lost. Because I mean, really, if you focus on what you're conceding off your own puck out first, even both teams haven't conceded that much off their own puck out. Waterford have conceded 16 points in 4 games. Limerick have conceded 1-7. And that kind of shows that, the team has a bit of clarity about where the ball is going. And if they do go short, that they have some sort of plan or exit strategy where they're not getting turned over very easily. And the man, we all know that puck out where short one out to cornerback gets the ball and launch. They're probably avoiding that. And if I give you one example, if you look at Clare conceded 10 points against Limerick off their own puck out, and we contrast that with Watford and Limerick, 16 and 10 points. So that'll just show you where Watford and Limerick are regards clarity on their own puckout.
Which to me is quite incredible that in season one, a disjointed season, that Liam Cahill can have the team at that level. Especially considering, there's a bit of player change over there.
Yeah, and you know what, like Shane, I mean, we, loads of people would think we have to come up with some big elaborate plan, to score off our puckout or not concede off our puckout, but really it's down to clarity, and we'll show the slides later on about Ballygunner and Bursley last year in the club Munster final. Like it's literally about everybody knowing where the ball is gonna go to, and you get bodies there. And I mean, you'll see in the picture there how even if Ballygunner won that ball, like there was no way they were getting past 6 or 7 Bursley lads that were lining up there,
Yeah, and actually one thing, remind me if I forget to bring it up, but the approach that Watford had in the Munster final of letting Barry Nash get the ball an awful lot of times, and then it was up to him to find a way to work it out. But we'll come back to that in a little while. I just want to start out with the positives of Watford on their own puck out. You've made a couple of slides here, so I'll just bring up the first one here, and we can see Stephen Bennett and Jack Prendergast in as the blocker. So what did you see here?
And I suppose the first thing I'm looking at here is that Kilkenny, it's the way Kilkenny set up on the opposition puckout. So, I mean, we can see here Kilkenny players have all, I suppose, bunched in and followed. And as you can see, there's space on both sides of the field. So what you're allowing the keeper there is you're allowing him to puck into an area where that a Watford player can run into. But the killer for the Kilkenny backs there is they're running sideways to the ball. Right, if they, your traditional way where we all probably heard was 3 half backs and 3 half forwards across the line, and the half back line were able to attack the ball straight on, which gave them an advantage. But as you can see here, if you're running out into that space as a back, you're sideways. You're maybe trying to get a hurl in, maybe to get a flick, but you can't get any purchase on that ball if you're contesting that high ball.
To me, Sean, that looks like a pretty naive setup from Kilkenny there, that you're allowing yourself to, like, how many players are we looking at inside the D and backwards? You're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 defenders plus a goalkeeper, and even swathes of space. Yeah,
and like, I suppose people are very hard on Kilkenny, and in fairness, look, obviously you can see there they were a bit naive, but at times, and you'll see it in the next couple of slides, like they did try to go zonal, but I just don't think they were ready for what Watford brought, that movement that Watford brought on the puckout.
Yeah, so do you want me to move on to the second slide there?
Yeah, you can move on, and I suppose the big one here is and it's a lesson for any player, young or old, what you can do for another player off the ball. And you can see what Prendergast has done. He's got in between the two Kilkenny boys that are chasing, and that allows Bennett that extra yard to get out and win that puck out. So Prendergast there is just slowing down that run. And that's I think Kevin Walsh has a book out about the invisible game at the moment. And if there's such thing as an invisible game, that's the work that Prendergast does for Bennett there is unreal. And like that finishes off the puck out win. That's the kind of the icing on the cake, to win that puck out, and that's something you don't see when you're at home looking at the game on the sideways camera. Just only when you're at the game, or you get these angles that you're able to see those little things that make the puck out win,
Yeah, and if I'm to jump back up to the first puck out, if you look at the midfield at the left side and midfield at the right, and then move back down to the second one, and again look at midfield left and right, to me the Kilkenny wing forwards are trying to somewhat set up zonally.
Yes.
But like a puck out can carry them, so they're almost irrelevant.
And that's the one thing, they have, O'Keefe has a long puck out, and it's just nullifying Kilkenny bringing back their deep wing forwards.
And we go on to the next slide then.
Yeah, and the next one is interesting because if you see Fagan, we'll work from the left here. So you see Fagan here on the left, so he's going to make a run across to the right hand side of the field. But what makes the space here is the Watford midfield setting up in the middle of the field. They're set up in the middle. They're not kind of, usually one goes out to the left, one goes to the right. So what they've done is by setting up in the middle here, they've created this pocket of space. It's between Padraig Walsh and I think John Donnelly. John Donnelly's the wing forward. Now, in fairness to Kilkenny, I think people are a small bit hard on Kilkenny too, because in fairness, they are trying to marks only here. Like you can see Pádraig Walsh, he's pointing, and they're trying to marks only. But like if you move it on, Fagan makes a really intelligent run. He goes across, and he looks like he's probably going to go the whole way across, and that Pádraig Walsh can pick him up. But just at the last second, he checks his run and moves into that space, as you can see on the next slide. And what he's doing there, then he's able to actually attack the ball straight, and he's able to win the ball. And I suppose it was probably too much ground for John Donnelly to make up to try and influence the game or get a blocking.
Yeah. So like that looks fairly rehearsed from your point of view, is it?
Well, I would say that Cahill and Beavens are just, I suppose they might say, look, start in the middle or whatever, but I think they probably have just given him a license to move, and it's up to O'Keefe to see what's on and hit it. Like, and to be honest, Shane, you know yourself, you can have the best plans and it might work for the first 5 or 10 minutes, but you get a bad belt and get hit, or things just go out of your head. The game just goes out of your head, so you can't really structure hurling that way, and even on the Puckout. But I would say they just have given a license to move, and then it's up to O'Keefe to pick out what's there, and like I'd say that's a coaching point for any team and even goalkeepers, is that if there's loads of movement going on in front of you and it's still not on, just don't puck the ball out. Give your forwards time to just maybe all go back over to one side and let it down into a crowd. But I think I would say the Waterford players have a license to do a lot of movement, but when it doesn't come, I'd say they just pack over to one side, and then O'Keefe can throw it down onto that area.
Yeah, so we'll continue with the positives of the Waterford Puckout. We're going to go on to slide 3 here, and Stephen Bennett and Callum Lyons become particularly influential here.
Yeah, and like what's interesting here is the circle in the middle. Like you can see the midfield and like the half forward line all in the line, and you probably would have seen a bit of this with Limerick there in the last couple of years, where they all kind of line up in a straight line, and this creates huge space. Now the problem here is that, again, Kilkenny's players are following, all right, and they're a bit reactive to the movement. And I think it's Paddy Deegan here on the left. He's just outside the circle. Like he's going following across, and that's just making all the space for Bennett to run into and O'Keefe to hit into space. And the other part of that then is like you have wing back, and we can see Callum Lyons and Kyle Hayes this year, like they're bombing up the field. It's football style, it's Jack McCaffrey style stuff.
Yeah.
And Lyons is ready to go. If that ball is put in space over his head, he's ready to bomb onto it. But again, what Waterford are doing is they're just pulling and dragging Kilkenny players everywhere, and that gives Bennett a chance to run into the space.
Yeah, so we'll move it on to the second part of that slide, and you can explain that one to us.
Yeah, and you can see it here. Bennett's contesting the ball. Lyons is making a run up that line, and the big one here is, and this comes down to sometimes, we can tell. I can tell my wing forward, I want you to work back. I want you to work back. And you're a great lad for doing that. But like Waterford nearly play on Kilkenny's honesty here, because you can see the wing forward for Kilkenny is tracking back. He's trying to get on the break. He's trying to do the right thing, and probably what he was told. But Callum Lyons is banking on Bennett winning that ball out in front, and he's actually going to bomb higher and run higher than the Kilkenny wing forward.
So it's risk reward, really, isn't it?
Risk reward. But I suppose that's the beauty of then having your Tig de Burka, back. And sometimes this is probably an issue for teams who try and play the sweeper and maybe have to, if you play a sweeper, we think of, normal play, but like if you're playing a sweeper, I think you have to incorporate that into your puckouts, how you set up against the opposition puckout, even your sideline cuts. I think you have to incorporate sweeper into your thinking around all other parts of the play,
Yeah, and I'm just going to bring up the final slide there where Lyons eventually has the shot. I think that's the one where he knocked it over the bar, isn't it?
He knocked it over the bar, and like the beauty here is, the reason I highlighted Kilkenny player, like he can't commit. Like before Callum Lyons hit that shot, he couldn't overcommit to go into Lyons, because as you can see inside, you can leave a 2-on-1 then for Watford, and there's a goal chance coming. So and that's the beauty about this movement and I suppose, all these runs coming from deep is that it just unsettles the defence because you're just scrambling around, like, you know. And I suppose Kilkenny got caught, you know, sometimes scrambling, and it didn't work for them. Like.
Yeah. So there's obviously a big difference in how the puckouts worked against the likes of Kilkenny, and even you were talking about how much they scored in the other games against Cork and Clare. But then to contrast it with what happened against against Limerick in the Munster final, I'll just bring that up on screen and you can talk us through it.
Yeah, well, like you say, if you look at it, like say 2-9 they scored against Kilkenny, Watford after puckout, 2-9 against Clare, and 1-8 against Cork. And then if we look at the Limerick game in the Munster final, they only scored 6 points. So that'll kind of give you a reading of, I suppose, Watford coming up against a Limerick team who have lots of clarity on how to set up on the opposition puckout. And the main thing for me is that they have been defending zonally for the last couple of seasons. If you go back to the Cork semi-final in is it 18? Yeah, like you had Harnedy and all these boys that were bunching and breaking, and you know Dan Morrissey and Diarmaid Burns that day were the two wing backs, and they just held with, and it allowed them to turn over some of the puckouts for Cork.
But to me that doesn't seem overly different to what Pádraig Walsh and Cillian Buckley were trying to do in that previous slide. So what was the difference?
Well, for me, I think Limerick are just a well-oiled machine, and I'd say they rep this, you know, every week. It's repped. So, you know, that they have clarity, and like if you think about it, they've repped this probably setup, playing in grounds where there's 50,000-60,000 in it, and you can't hear a thing, and you have to work on. You're relying on, say, what you've done in training, but here now the beauty of, you know, no one in the stand is you can actually communicate across the line. So I can be Diarmaid Burns and I can be telling Declan Hannon, you know, someone's after going there, cover him, I'm staying put. You know, you can actually communicate to each other. And I just think they have just loads of clarity. And again, the midfield for Limerick, as we've seen in some slides, are a big help to their half back line when they're defending against the long puckle and going zonal.
Yeah, so I'm going to move it on to the second slide in this one, the puckout number 4, and you can just explain what's happening to us here.
Yeah, and this might be a possible solution for Watford on their puckout, and we've mentioned it before that, you know, you can do all this running and you know, the puckout might be on, but we can see here Watford have just, you know, put 3 players over to one side. There has been movement. Nothing's on for the keeper. There's no probably obvious choice for the keeper to hit to, and basically Stephen O'Keefe is just going to puck it down onto an area where our Watford have bodies and hopefully win a break, or hopefully even win a clean. But I mean, the big thing is, and it reminded me of Bursley versus Ballygunner in the Munster final last year, in the club final.
Yeah, I have that up on screen now.
Yeah, like sometimes, you know, as I said to you at the start, it doesn't have to be fancy. Sometimes, if you puck it down to an area where there's bodies, you know, you're not going to let the opposition, even if the opposition do win possession off your puckout, they're not going to be able to counter-attack and break against you, because you can see here, if a Ballygunner player wins possession, look at the amount of bodies, Bursley bodies, is going to have to go through.
Yeah, to me that's reminded, like, there's a couple of things going on there. Like Philip Mahoney couldn't get into the game because he's been such a good sweeper for Ballygunner in so many games. He gets in behind, puckout goes out the wing, he sweeps in behind, other wing sweeps in behind. And it even reminded me of the Leinster final last year, that Pádraig Walsh was playing a sweeper for Kilkenny, but it was more or less that sort of pencil formation that Wexford were doing, or they were keeping pretty compact in the middle, and they just dumped it straight down on top of Pádraig Walsh. And if he has six lads coming from all directions, what can he actually do? Nothing. As a sweeper, that's it's an impossible task.
It is, and to be honest, against Limerick have, as you've seen there before, Limerick have scored 130. I think it was 131 off the opposition puckout, and the reason is because they're able to counter-attack when they win back possession off the opposition puckout. But if you hit down to an area where there's loads of bodies, I mean, you can see here, like, you're just not going to be able to get out there, you know. And you know, now the one thing I would say is, Limerick wing backs are very cute sometimes. They will stay out of this area. They'll hang out and they'll hope that someone will win a possession and it gets popped out to them. That's one thing you'd have to watch out for, and that probably comes down to then maybe your corner forward keeping an eye on that, your corner forward keeping an eye on that, and just stopping that ball to be shoveled out to a wing back. But the big other thing for me is, and we all know it, these big ruck situations and breaks off puckouts. So someone wins a ball and there's 2 or 3 lads around him tackling. It's going to be very interesting how Fergal Horgan referees this, because you know yourself, some referees are looking at the player with possession and they're looking at his feet and saying, has he taken more than 4 steps? Do I award a free? Other referees are looking at, are they on the hand? Are the players tackling the man in possession? Are they grabbing his hand? Are they tackling high? What are they doing? Are they fouling him? So, that's an area now where it'll be very interesting, because we know that Limerick like to defend very aggressively, and they like to get a player in possession and get 2 or 3 lads in around him. So I think that'll be vital, because we've 2 free takers. We've Dermot Burns, who I was talking to Barry Cleary from Wexford there during the week, and he feels that Dermot Burns should be hurler of the year the way things are going, and he's an excellent long range free taker. And then the other side of it, then you've Stephen Bennett, who is hitting the frees very well. So it might be an interesting area. I don't know if you have any thoughts on it.
Well, what you were saying about the referee's interpretation is a big one, because Fergal Horgan generally likes to let it flow and swallow the whistle to some degree, but he will blow for technical fouls of over carrying. So that obviously comes in when you have 2 or 3 players trying to strip someone and hold them up. It's very much how he interprets that situation. And you've got some slides there showing how Watford react on puckouts, that if they lose a puckout, how they swarm around. So I'll just bring that up on screen.
Yeah, so this is the puckout in the Munster final, and you can see here, and this is why I said at the start, this is the danger of going your 1 and lost. So this is a Watford puckout, and Limerick actually win possession, but because Watford hit it down to a crowd, when Morrissey won possession, he was kind of bottled up straight away. And if you move on to the next slide, you can see, because there was a crowd there, the ball was turned over. So Morrissey tried to give a hand pass. I think Hannon was coming off the shoulder. He tried to give a hand pass, and one of the Watford boys got a hurley to it, and the ball spilled up into the air. And I think Jack Prendergast won possession there. And then if you move on to the next slide, then what did it allow? It allowed Watford to run at the Limerick defence. So you can see here, Limerick have gone from winning the ball off the Watford puckout to losing it, and it allowed Watford then break against them. And we all know Watford are Jamie Barron, all these lads coming running hard at you. They attack you hard, so. And you can see here, Limerick's defence. They're standing. They've someone running hard at them. Dermot Burns and Kyle Hayes are nearly in a kind of a standing position. They're just in a great position to tackle someone coming at you hard. And Declan Hannon is chasing back. So that's one thing I would say to any these performance analysts and even management. You might get these stats saying 113 and lost 7, and you might think things are going too bad, or vice versa. You sometimes you have to look deeper at what's going on.
Yeah, and that really stands out too, because in that image, which I'll bring back up again, because they've been kind of turned over in a dangerous area. Tom Morrissey is now out of the play there, number 12 with the yellow helmet. Keane Lynch is out of the play, and you can even see by their body shape, they know they're not actually getting after Jack Prendergast there. And Dermot Burns and Kyle Hayes, there's every half-back is susceptible if you run, every defender, every player on the field, if you run straight at them, they're susceptible. And do you feel that Watford can get more joy out of this?
Yeah, it's 2020, and you're saying to yourself, that's a very agricultural method or thinking of just letting that ball down and into a crowd and taking a chance when you win the break. But it could be effective against Limerick, because Limerick have such a good setup on the opposition puckout, and it doesn't leave you as open. So if I and probably no better, Buchels, Beavens and Cahill probably are looking at this, and they probably might be identifying it. But and you can see the Waterford players, they are up for it. When they hurl at this, when they're hurling this year, they are up for it. And that's where maybe the intensity part. I know it's hard to define intensity, but coming out of those rucks and winning that breaking ball. That's probably, one definition I'd put up on what intensity is,
Yeah, and now we'll move on to Puckout 5, why bunching and breaking off the Puckout is difficult against Limerick. So this will be a big challenge for Watford again.
Yeah, and that's the one challenge because, O'Donoghue and Lynch, I know Lynch has been back in centre forward, but even Darragh Donovan is excellent at it as well. Like, they're like two pillars for their half back line, and the two midfielders trust their forwards to cut out any ball to suppose, number one, the opposition's backs, but number two, if the opposition's midfielder drops deep looking for the puck out, and we'll have a look at the Clare one in a few minutes, but like you can see here, Fagan is running to the right, and like you can see Cian Lynch is there, so even if a puck out comes down and it's broke, Cian Lynch is there on the break, and there's a bit of a gap between Cian Lynch's man then, so Cian Lynch is more like a free player there, so like they're setting up this extra bank across their half back line that helps them defend the puck out.
And how much of this is down to like your full forward line dropping 40 yards from goal and just allowing the cornerback and the opposition team to have the ball if they want?
It's vital. It's vital. It doesn't, and we all heard that defending starts from the cornerback or corner forward and all that, but I mean that really rings true when you're setting up like this. You have to, number one, Cian Lynch has to trust his corner forward and his wing forwards in front of him and his centre forward, but it's really important that that you set up like that, because I mean that doesn't happen. Like, Cian Lynch will get taken out of the game if, say, Garen Gillan just sits on the shoulder of the corner back, and next thing Jamie Barron comes down through the middle between the wing back and between the Limerick wing back and the Limerick centre back and takes a ball off Stephen O'Keefe, if you know what I mean. Like, it just, you need to be covering space. You can't be thinking your man. You need to be thinking space. And again, that's down to management. I'd say being very comfortable in saying, look, if the cornerback does get it, that's fine. That's no slight on you. We're not going to give out you. It's about how you close him down after that, and what you're doing for the team. What that's doing for the team behind you down the field.
Did you find in the Munster final that Watford were allowing Barry Nash to get the ball and then trying to send him down the corridor on the sideline, where his options were limited to, number one, knock it long, number two, turn it inside and maybe hit a dangerous crossfield ball, or try and hand pass to a guy who has someone up behind him? Yeah,
I did know, and I don't know, sometimes it worked, and like I suppose the one thing now is they have Kyle Hayes there in the half back line, and I think they usually kind of link up Kyle Hayes on Barry Nash's side, don't they? But yeah, look, to be honest, the thinking behind that for me would be, and I don't know if you ever watched the video I did on delivery zones, and with like 1 in 3 balls hit from inside a team's 45, or only 1 in the opposition part, or 3 in every 10. 3 in every 10. So I mean, what you're doing with that setup, you're saying, right, we give it to the cornerback, or give it to Nash, and you either have to take me on, or you just deliver long, as you say. And I mean, chances of winning the ball then are way down compared to if you work the ball up and get it to pass your half back and then deliver it in. But yeah, I think Watford definitely tried that. Yeah. But I don't know about you. What do you think? I'd be nervous about giving it to him now, because I think Kyle Hayes is settled into a wing back, and I think he's a real danger there. If the ball goes to Nash and it gets to Hayes, the afterburners are going to be put on. And I don't think.
Yeah, at the same time, I don't think Limerick look quite as cohesive as they've had maybe earlier in the season against Tipperary. Obviously, Tipperary were fairly heavily beaten, and so were Clare. But to me, I'm starting to wonder, is the toll of not having your fullback and your cornerback, who are ordinarily Mike Casey and Richie English, who's back, but he hasn't been thrown into the team just yet, and no longer having Dan Morrissey out in the wing. I don't know if they're as cohesive as they were. And Kyle Hayes has been used to playing the forwards, and he's brilliant front and back. But I don't know if they're quite as cohesive. Like David Reedy went centre forward in the Munster final, didn't really happen for him. Now Cian Lynch is back centre forward. I don't know if they're 100% flowing, and I think Watford have an opportunity because of this.
You could be right there, yeah, because I think one of the boys sent it on to me, Dan Morrissey got a couple of balls there against Galway, and he did launch him and the ball was turned over straight away. So that's one player you're kind of saying to yourself, geez, do we let him get the ball now? Because there might be a likelihood that he'll just turn around and deliver it. And again with Barry Nash, I think I thought maybe he's starting to settle in a small bit into the role. But you probably have merit there that they're not firing on all cylinders because of that.
Yeah, and because Galway look a bit of a disjointed team this year, but still in all, they had enough scoring chances to win that game. And now also add into the fact that Aaron Gallan, number one, his
50-50.
So well they say 50-50. I think we always know that means there's a fair chance they'll play. But if you have a rib injury, and I've cracked one before, and it's no fun, and if you get a tap on it, it's not good. And then the other thing is his finger was heavily bandaged, so there's a bit of a ligament issue there. If you're not hitting your frees right, if you have a couple of, I would consider Barry Nash and Kyle Hayes. I mean, you could consider them native forwards. I know you could make the case, you could argue the toss with Kyle Hayes being a centre back underage. But to me, there's a lot of rejigging of this team, and then if your free taker isn't at 100%, your most dangerous forward, I don't know, I'd be a little bit concerned for Limerick on that front.
Yeah, and what's interesting there now, you say that like Dan Morrissey and Barry Nash in the back line. I remember being down at the league semi-final down in Northern Park last year, and
against Dublin.
Against Dublin, yeah, and it was tight enough, but like you could see last year that, and everyone could see it, but Limerick kind of revolving their game, and it was really about moving off the shoulder and working it out of the back line. And with Limerick people behind me, and they were going mad. They just wanted lads to get the ball and get it into the forwards. But it could be merit there that Barry Nash and Dan Morrissey weren't training over the last year and a bit in those positions, and I suppose trying to start those attacks out from the full back line. They were probably normally in the half back line, making runs and getting possession. So you could have merit in that maybe Limerick aren't able to work it out as good from the full back line as they were.
Yeah.
So could be merit in that, what you're saying, definitely.
Yeah, and just to move it on to the second part of that slide about bunching and breaking being difficult against Limerick, you have Keane Lynch up close here. Yeah,
so you see here, the clear midfielder has gone in between the centre forward and the wing forward, so he's looking for a ball off Quilligan. But again, you see it there, if you hit that ball to that midfielder, isn't there a trap there? One of those Limerick players are going to close him down.
Yeah.
And Lynch knows that, and he doesn't have to gamble. He doesn't have to worry about his midfielder there. He has to worry about what's going on behind him if the ball goes long. So that's the beauty of their setup. And I to be honest, I think Limerick, their setup on the opposition puckout is nearly their base. You talk about KPIs, and I think it's one of their foundations for how they succeed and why they are where they are. Because you can see it there, they've scored 131. I don't know what you think, what you've seen of them on their setup on the opposition puckout.
I think they're exceptional. They make it very, very difficult. They strip you, like Will O'Donoghue seems to be a recurrent theme of getting to wherever the breakdown area is and getting on the ball. And then the fact that they use it so well, very quickly once they turn you over, there's 3 or 4 lads running off each other's shoulder, boom, 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 hand passes, and then somebody is standing up at midfield, picking a lovely ball into space for Aaron Gallan, and it's pretty much undefendable. If they get on top and win those breaks around the middle, get the positive turnovers, I suppose, as some teams call them, I don't see a way for Watford to win it if they lose that particular battle. But I've seen enough from Watford to suggest that they can compete in that area. They were level at the second water break the last year in the Munster final. And I'm not 100% sure what the reason is that they kind of lost it going down the stretch and lost it by 4 points. But their confidence must have grown as well from those couple of wins since. So they're not out of it.
No, they have a great chance. And I think they have the players that can trouble Limerick. And to be honest, it is two teams that run hard, counter-attack. So it's not a contrast to styles really. Usually you could have a final and it's one county against another county and it's a contrast to styles. These two teams kind of play very similar. I don't know, would you agree with that? They run hard, they're They've people coming off the shoulder. They're comfortable with playing only one or two in the full forward line. Like I think this is like, it is set up for a great game, and my only worry is that, as you said earlier, Watford are in year 1 and Limerick are in year 4, and maybe when the pressure comes on, people revert to type and all that side of thing when the pressure comes on. And I think last year in the All-Ireland semi-final against Kilkenny, Limerick had their moment where they reverted to type. I remember Sean Flynn getting a couple of balls in the corner and just launching them, and in the first few minutes, and it was turned over straight away against Kilkenny. And I think Limerick won't do that now. I think Limerick will live and die by the sword of the way they're playing.
It's interesting you mentioned the reverting to type thing, because the first year of John Kiley's reign, 2017 qualifier against Kilkenny in Nolan Park, I watched that game, and something that really stood out to me was, over the course of the game, 3 times definitely, maybe 4 times, out of panic on the field or whatever it was, Limerick lads went to just pull on the ball in the middle of the field, which we all know is basically probably a good possession in a 50-50 ball. And the last day, Keane Lynch, like, obviously unbelievable hurler, for no real reason just pulled on the ball on the ground against Galway. And that to me was a little bit of, is this Limerick team a little bit unsure of itself at the moment? They weren't flowing, they haven't been flowing in the past couple of games. So that's why I kind of wonder, between all of that and the toll of those guys being out injured in the full back line, rejigging the pieces, Aaron Gallan, who started the season brilliantly and was unbelievable against Tip, he's not 100% at the moment. So that's why I kind of wonder, is there a small bit of, is there a lack of surety in the team at the minute compared with, let's say, after the Tipperary game?
Yeah, and it's gas now, like, and that's, I would agree with some parts of it now, but what I think Limerick have, and it's just down to their 2 puckouts even, and I know we're talking puckouts everything in the game, but I think no matter how bad Limerick play, you know 2 things: they're very good and they've clarity on their own puckout, and they're very good to set up against the opposition puckout.
Yeah.
So, it keeps them in games. I think it keeps them in games, and I think it has kept them in games. And I agree, like, there has been times where they haven't played well. I don't think they played that well in the first half against Clare. There was times against Waterford, but then you have to credit the other teams coming at them as well. But yeah, look, there might be a few little chinks there. And like, again, like, no better team than Watford probably to maybe expose them with their running, with the way they run hard and the way they play. And they do look hungry this year. And I know hungry is a kind of a flippant word, but like, their hunger to work, their hunger to run hard, their hunger to atone for any mistakes. It's huge in the Watford team this year. I don't know, do you see that as well?
Oh, I do, yeah. There's big change in them. But if I just jump on a couple of slides to Limerick's clarity and their setup on the opposition puckout, we might quickly run through the rest of the slides there. I'll just kind of let you take it away. So that one where you can see Nash and Hannon in the near part of the screen.
So, like, this is something for Watford really to look out for, like, because you can see it here again. It looks like Limerick are showing Galway their full back, the ball to the full back line, and they're saying to Galway, look, hit the full back line. And there's the space, but like you can see here, they're all set up. The half back line are cutting out any ball that could be hit to maybe any wing backs for Galway or any midfielders. But the big one here I want you to look at is, you see the white here. Watch the handover between O'Donoghue and Nash. So you can see here, like, Nash is the kind of spare man here, and the puck out actually goes out short. So there's a couple of things going on here. Limerick are pushing up when the ball goes short. But the other thing then is the handover between Nash and O'Donoghue of David Burke. And if you go on to the next slide, I think it'll probably show it better.
Nash contesting.
Yeah, so like, if you see here, the ball is down to the corner back, right? The ball is down to the corner back. All the Limerick players push up. So you see Kyle Hayes is pushed up on his man. I think the wing forward at the time was Flanagan. He's pushed up on his man. And David Burke is trying to get in behind Kyle Hayes. Now, rather than O'Donoghue following Burke all the way and being sideways attacking the ball, what happens is they communicate, and Nash actually picks up that run. So he comes from his sweeper position or extra back position, and he comes and attacks the ball straight on and hard. And I thought that was excellent. That, like, the clarity in that for Limerick was unbelievable. Like, because like, the easiest thing to happen there was O'Donoghue to get caught tracking David Burke across, the ball going over, and David Burke being able to maybe catch a ball. And if you move on to the next slide, what you see is, like, you see Nash being able to attack the ball hard, and he actually won the ball up top in the air. And even if he didn't win the ball up top in the air, what you had then is you had O'Donoghue on that break, and we've talked about O'Donoghue and Lynch getting on those breaks, or O'Donoghue in the midfield. So I thought that was an excellent piece of communication between different lines of the field. And this comes back to having your spare man. Do you know how many times do we kind of have a spare man in club games or whatever type of game, and that lad, he just plonks there and sits there and hoping that the opposition hit the ball left or right from him, and he'll collect it, or he'll collect it off his backs, where this is interplay between his midfield and the spare man on a puckout, off a sharp puckout. So I thought this was excellent. I don't know what you think about it, but I just thought this was clarity 101 for me. Like.
Well, as you're saying this, I'm just thinking back on when I rewatched the game, and 5 times in the first half, Davy Burke was taken off at half time. We know he's a class player over the years, but he had 5 balls caught over him in the first half. Now, one of them I think was in his own half of the field, so it wouldn't relate to the puckout, but there was definitely 3 to 4 puckouts caught over his head, and that to me suggests that this could have happened a couple of times. Now, they weren't all from Nash. I think there was definitely one from Kyle Hayes.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, is it that organisation from a puckout allows a guy to just be in a position to attack? And if so, that's a crucial thing to have. But we might just jump on then to Limerick's ability to play with their own short puckouts.
Yeah, and look, this is for me is the benefit of having Kyle Hayes in the half back line. You have legs, but he's played in the forwards, so I suppose we all want our forwards coming off the shoulder looking for the ball, and I just think he has it all to play wing back. So if you look at this puckout, Mickey Quaid hits it out to Hayes. Morrissey is actually the free man at full back, and again, like, this is about coming off the shoulder, and this is like the Limericks' willingness to show up for each other off the ball. So like, the ball is poked out to Hayes. Hayes doesn't get the ball and just try and lamp it. He actually, if you move on to the next slide, he picks up Dan Morrissey's run and passes to Dan Morrissey. And by passing it to Dan Morrissey, he's after coming off the shoulder, and he's green grass in front of him. All right, he's taking in other Galway players, and he's able to run hard then straight down the field. And what's the big hope there then is that Galway players get attracted to him, and he's able to pop the ball then off to someone else higher up the field. And in this scenario, as you can see, he pops the ball to Cian Lynch. But the beauty of having Kyle Hayes here, look what Kyle Hayes does. He doesn't just give the pass to Morrissey and stand. He's looking for it again. And you can see Lynch wins the ball, and he's looking for Hayes again. And next thing you know, the ball is popped to Hayes, and Hayes is able to work up to near that I suppose that golden zone, I call it, between 265s for deliveries. He's able to deliver a ball into space, and I think he was in front of Aaron Gillan, if you see in the last slide. But what's interesting about that is, Shane, is I don't know, did you ever watch it? 2017 coaching conference, Paul Kinnerk gave a talk, and literally he had a kind of a drill or a match, not a drill, it was kind of a game-based scenario type thing, where it was exactly like what happened there. Ball went out to a corner back or wing back, and they popped a pass, and his thing was that after giving that pass, it wasn't about just standing up and maybe finding a man. It was about going again and looking for it again. So I found that interesting, and it was actually, was nearly like a carbon copy of what happened on that puckout against Galway.
Is every team trying to do this?
Every team is probably trying it, yeah, definitely. But like, again, I have to say, like, Limerick are in year 4. I mean, you look at most of the other counties, like, they're in year 1, and then any counties that are in year 2. Is it really year 2 with COVID? Like, you probably had January, February, March, a long break, players coming off a club championship. You had 4 or 5 weeks to get ready. So, I mean, the one thing with all these things, and it's like, if you think of it this way, it's about repping it and for it to be natural. Like we spoke about, you know, reverting back to type. Like you need to rep these things that they're like. You know, if you think of it, what did we learn when we were in school that we still know now? It's probably our times tables because it was bit into us. And I think that's the way you have to do these things. You just have to rep it, and you know, in game-based scenarios, and just get it into your head, into your body, into your mindset that you're going to keep running off the shoulder for players. And I think the fact that Limerick are near 4, and to be honest, I think it's a lesson to a lot of county boards and fans even, like that. You know, you need patience. Like you just have to have patience with, you know, if a county board have picked the right management and coaches and everything, you have to give them time. Like there is no quick fix. Now I know Watford in the Ireland final in year 1 with Cahill, but like there is no quick fix. I don't think.